So welcome and thank you to the candidates and the over 400 who are joining us online for being with us this afternoon for the 16th Congressional District Candidates Forum for the March 5th primary election. I'm Judy Kleinberg. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Palo Alto, which was founded in 1920 after women won the right to vote. The League envisions a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The League is nonpartisan, meaning we neither support nor oppose candidates or parties. Our organization has two distinct roles. One is advocacy for public policy issues that we have studied and developed formal positions for. The other is voter service, which brings voters impartial information on issues and candidates. Voter service is the hat we're wearing today in presenting this forum, where you can learn about the candidates running to represent you in the Congressional District number 16. Our co-sponsors for this forum this afternoon include the Leagues of Women Voters of Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Los Altos, Mountain View, San Jose, Santa Clara, Southwest Santa Clara Valley, South San Mateo County, and North and Central San Mateo County. We're thrilled to have all of them together. And I want to give a very special shout out to Congregation Beth Am for publicizing this forum to their members. So now I'd like to turn the microphone over to our wonderful moderator, Sigrid Pinsky.
Thank you, Judy. Good evening, everyone. I'm proud to be a member of the League and to be part of bringing you this opportunity to hear from 10 of the 11 candidates running for Congressional District 16. The candidates participating tonight are, in alphabetical order, Joby Bernstein, Peter Dixon, Rishi Kumar, Sam Liccardo, Evan Lowe, Julie Lithcott-Hames, Ahmed Mustafa, Peter Otaki, Joe Simidian, and Greg Tanaka. Before we begin, I want to remind the candidates and the audience that this evening we're hosting a forum, not a debate. There is no rebuttal and there will be no personal attacks, I've been assured. Candidates have been asked to focus on their own campaigns. I'd also like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate in this forum under the guidelines we have set forth. Because this is a Zoom webinar, only the candidates and I can see the timer. And we'll have our microphones activated. It'll just be us. This forum will be posted to the League's YouTube channel. The link can be found on our website, LWVPaloAlto.org. Note that whenever this recording is aired, it must be shown in its entirety. We want to ensure that no candidate statements are taken out of context. All the candidates have agreed to that requirement. I'll go over the format of our session this afternoon. We're scheduled to finish at 6. And to help us all keep on track, we'll be keeping time using a computerized stopwatch that will be visible to the candidates and me only. We'll begin with an opening statement by each candidate of up to 2 minutes. The order was determined randomly ahead of time. We'll then move to our question period. Candidates will be called on in varying, alternating order. For each question, we'll have 1 minute to answer. I remind candidates that you can provide shorter answers and we can get to more questions. I also ask candidates to keep themselves on mute when you're not speaking. Questions for this forum have been solicited in advance from all of you who registered. There are two league members are screening questions that we received during the forum, and I'll be receiving those throughout. They might be combining them to reduce the number of questions. Following the question period, we'll hear closing statements from each candidate of up to 1.5 minutes. These statements will be in the reverse order of opening statements. So with that, it's time to go to opening statements. And Mr. Lowe, you are first.
Thank you very much, and happy Saturday to each and every one of you for joining us here online and caring about our democracy, and to our dedicated League of Women Voters for allowing this opportunity to have conversations with so many of us here as well. For those of you who have had not the pleasure to meet, my name is Evan Lowe, and I previously served on the Campbell City Council for 8 years, and now concluding my 10th year in the California State Legislature. In that period of time, the Sacramento Bee named me the most prolific lawmaker in Sacramento out of 120 legislators because of the effectiveness on passing legislation. And I say that because it is difficult to help exceed expectations, but also to help deliver. And I take that very seriously. We oftentimes hear about the gridlock in Congress, and I know that it will take intentionality, long tenure to be able to build the type of partnership over partisanship to getting things done. So in that regard and those experiences, when it came to issues of public safety and keeping our community safe, I strengthened hate crime laws and received Legislative of the Year from the California Police Chiefs Association. When there was the Stanford rape case and Judge Brock Turner, I leaned in and made mandatory sentencing on rape. When it came time to keeping our community safe and hate crime laws, I focused on that as well. When we received notion and word about the impact of wildfires in our communities and the requests from our firefighters and first responders, I leaned in and helped get the type of budget allocations to our local fire districts and budget augmentations from the state of California. When it came time to abortion rights and the attack of Roe v. Wade in overturning over 50 years of precedent for women's rights, I leaned in and co-authored protections for constitutional protections for reproductive freedom and abortion rights in our state. I'll continue to do that, and I look forward to this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Simidian, you're next. You're muted, Mr. Simidian.
No.
Here we go. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm County Supervisor Joe Simidian. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. It's been my pleasure to represent many of you in the California State Senate, the California State Assembly, as a county supervisor, local mayor and council member, school board president through the years. And I think what I offer, and I hope you agree, is a candidacy and a willingness to serve ready from day one, based on that experience and the work I have done to date. A steady hand in what are frankly shaky times. As a friend of mine said, well, at least you won't add to the crazy, which I took to be a compliment. And it is, I think, important that we send folks who are ready to go to work right now. I understand the limitations of our congressional system, but taking up space for a decade or more in the hopes that one day, someday you'll be able to do the work, not what I'm hoping to do. I'm planning to go day one, be an effective advocate, work across the aisle when possible, and when not, stand up and speak out and push back, which will sometimes be necessary. I think most of you know that I am someone who looks to the future, whether it was renewable energy, whether it was the hands-free cell phone back in the day, the creation of transitional kindergarten. All of those are policy initiatives that I authored, led, and that have come to fruition. At the national level, we're going to have to deal with reproductive freedom and choice. We know we can't count on the United States Supreme Court. We're going to have to get even more aggressive and ambitious on climate change, and there is a lot we can do there. And we're certainly going to have to keep pushing to make affordable quality healthcare available to all in this country. Again, Joe Simidian, looking to the future and asking for your support for Congress. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Otake.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter Otake, running for CD16, and thanks to the League of Women Voters. I'm running because I'm fed up that Congress is broken. It's so polarized that each party is obsessed with making the other party look bad rather than to solve the major issues facing our nation. We deserve better representation. Several other candidates are career politicians who toe their party line and dare not risk reaching across the aisle. Partisan gridlock rules so major issues go unsolved. Most Americans are in the sensible middle, yet have no voice in Congress. Voting for a career politician will only continue gridlock in Congress. I grew up here. Silicon Valley thrives because it reinvents itself, and we don't let ideology prevent innovative solutions. I'll work across the aisle on solutions to issues facing our nation, as I did as Menlo Park's mayor. As mayor and a city council, I balanced our city's budget every year I was on the council, including paying down an unfunded pension liability. I was the first mayor in over 20 years to pass Menlo Park's housing element and rezoned sections of our city to accommodate up to 5,000 units of housing, of which a couple thousand have already been built. I also worked with our police department and also helped fund them through federal COPS grants, community-oriented policing grants that are available from the federal government to help them do their job and lowered crime rates in Menlo Park. I have the unique experience needed in economics, finance, national homeland security, and local concerns such as public safety to solve the major issues facing our country. I'm well qualified and can work across the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar.
Thank you, Sigrid and the League and everyone attending. It's an honor to be here. I'm Rishi Kumar and I get things done. I was honored to receive a historic 42% of the votes in this very District 16 about just a year ago. And I'm back to win. And we've actually won many cities and precincts in our district outright against an incumbent who had been in office for decades. December polling shows us leading the race. My run is actually about ethics and politics. I work only for the people, not special interest groups. And our district wants a problem solver in Washington to address the burning challenges. I'm not a career politician. I'm an engineer by education, a software executive with a full-time job, a C-suite, and a history of implementing innovative solutions. I'm the only one in this race who has a proven record of reducing crime. We lowered home burglaries by 50% in Saratoga, and I was honored to be re-elected with the highest vote count in 66 years of my city. So as your congressional rep, I will make sure to reduce crime in your city. I'm the only candidate in this race who successfully rejected 10 San Jose Water Company rate hikes and surcharges. As your congressional leader, I will end the greedy surcharges once and for all and push to municipalize San Jose Water and PG&E. I'm the only one who has challenged PG&E's sabotage of California's rooftop solar and protested their rate increases. I'm the only one who ever successfully opposed a tax measure. I'm the only one in this race who has taken a clean money pledge, no to PAC money or special interest groups. We have invested $1.4 million in this race. I bring tech industry experience. It's time to embrace fresh ideas and experience ethical leadership. Vote for change, vote for Rishi Kumar. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
Thank you for having me, and hello to everybody watching from home on a Saturday. You know, this is the first time in 30 plus years that we have had an open congressional race. And so just taking the time to participate in the democratic process here. Thank you all. So I'm Peter Dixon. I'm from here. I was raised here. I'm raising my family here. And this is where I left from to join the Marine Corps after 9/11. I served in the State Department under Hillary Clinton, and I served in the Obama administration, the Pentagon. And then I came back home here and built a business here. And so I also am not a career lifetime politician, but I am a lifetime public servant. And so I wanted to do something a little unique in these 2 minutes and just very quickly talk through in 2025, when our member of Congress is sworn in, what are the things that they're going to be likely facing on the world stage and domestically here at home? We're going to have a China that is looking to do a military blockade of Taiwan, given their domestic pressures at home. We'll have Russia and Ukraine, who are probably sitting down at the peace table after one more season of summer fighting. And we'll have the need to work with the Arab states to rebuild the Gaza Strip and to create a government there that's willing to live in peace with its neighbors. Domestically, we'll have Joe Biden as our president again. The independents have shown up in the last 3 cycles. They don't show up in the polls, but they'll show up to repudiate Donald Trump as they have before. We'll likely lose the Senate, but just as likely we'll win the House. And so we'll need somebody who has the ability to reach across the aisle. I've co-founded a nonpartisan nonprofit that in the last 3 cycles has worked to elect veterans to Congress, and then worked with them once there to pass more than 150 pieces of legislation. And so uniquely in this race, I have both the geopolitical and foreign policy chops, as well as the domestic chops in terms of bipartisanship to take advantage of the opportunities and meet the challenges of our time and tomorrow.
Thank you. Ms. Lithcott-Hames.
I was waiting for you to say Ms. I knew that would be my turn. The guys don't have it quite so fortunate. They still have to wait for their name to be read. Hello, everyone. I am Julie Lithcott-Hames. I'm grateful to this amazing coalition of leagues that has come together. I think Evan was talking, and if we could maybe
Everybody should be muted, but Ms. Lithcott-Hames. We'll give you a couple extra seconds.
Okay. I think we do need to reset the timer if we could. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. Julie Lithcott-Hames as in Technology Fund. Grateful to this coalition of leagues that has decided to put this conversation together. I know how essential a role the League of Women Voters plays in our thriving democracy, or even when it's not thriving. My mother, Jeannie, proudly served on the Voter Services Committee on the Palo Alto League for many years. I have proudly served this district my entire adult life as a Silicon Valley IP lawyer, Stanford Dean, board member of nonprofits that support women and kids, nonfiction author on human development, a mom of 2 grads at the Palo Alto Unified, a sitting city council member here in Palo Alto, where I'm helping to turn the tide on housing. I earned the endorsement of our local housing advocates known as YIMBY for my work on housing, and the NAACP of Silicon Valley made me Legislator of the Year in 2023 for my work on housing. Now our amazing Congresswoman has announced she's stepping down. I'm the only woman in a race against 10 men who would all seek to replace her. I know that in this post-Roe America, we cannot erode our female leadership in Congress, where we're only 27%. As an African-American and LGBTQ person, I'm also deeply aware of the need to protect everybody's freedoms and to ensure that everybody has a seat at the table. In Congress, I will vote to codify Roe, take immediate climate action, pass common sense gun laws, support Medicare for all, and get housing built so a paycheck will pay for rent once again and a down payment is in reach for all. I'm doing this for my kids, for all of our kids, because here's the thing, our youth are worried. Grandpa says, when I was your age, I had an apartment, I had a house. Grandma says, I'm glad I won't live to see the effects of climate change. None of these things help our youth. This is existential for them. I am the candidate who creates coalitions with my constituents and fellow leaders to move brave, bold, visionary ideas forward in a way that benefits our kids and us all.
Thank you. Mr. Liccardo.
Thank you. Thanks to the League of Women Voters, Palo Alto, and throughout all the chapters for coming together in a coalition to provide this opportunity to us and to so many residents in our community. You know, I'm a former mayor of the city of San Jose, and when you're the mayor of a city of 1 million people, you spend a lot of time in the nation's capital. And I've spent many hours speaking with President Biden about gun control, speaking with Secretary Fudge, for example, about homelessness, or Secretary Buttigieg about transit needs in our region. And those conversations usually went pretty well. But then I would go up the hill and on Capitol Hill, where I spent dozens of hours talking to elected officials, too many of the members of Congress who were from other than the Bay Area, when they heard us talking about things like homelessness and crime and the high cost of living, all too often we would hear, those are just local issues. That's not a national issue. That's not for us. And of course, we know better because when we think about crises like homelessness, there are 44 cities in this country that have at least 1,000 unhoused residents. The crisis has only exploded nationally, increasing 12% last year, and we now have 653,000 people living outside throughout the country at any given night. That's just one example, but so too with crime and the high cost of living in so many ways. So I'm running for Congress because I believe it's critically important that we get Congress to attend to these issues. We know that far too much is spent doing far too little in Congress. This is the least productive Congress in the last half century in terms of legislation that we have seen. When I was mayor, in my final year in office in 2022, we deployed innovative solutions to reduce street homelessness by 11%. We delivered the lowest homicide rate of any major city in the country and a $30 million surplus to my successor. That is the kind of accountability people expect out of mayors, and we should all expect out of Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
I wanted to first thank the organizers and thank the League for putting this on today. Also want to thank all my supporters who have joined in as participants. For those who don't know me yet, my name is Joby Bernstein, and I'm excited for you to get the chance to know me. After years of working and investing in policy, I believe that now is the time when we need fresh voices to bring new research-backed policy ideas, business experience, and ties across the aisle to represent us in DC. Over the last 15 years, I've watched our state succumb to the most devastating effects of climate change, from wildfires to droughts. I've watched the smartest minds from abroad come here in search of the American dream, only to be kicked out of this district. And I've watched the education in our homes become too far out of reach for too many, for those needing preschool to college. We are losing what is most vital to us, our environment, our neighbors, and our children's future. But I know what we can accomplish. I want every generation to see the natural beauty of this state, like I experienced in my first backpacking trip in the Sequoias. And I want everyone to be inspired in school, like teachers have always taught me to aim for my dreams. And I want everyone to see the talent from abroad, like my coworkers and friends, that are the essence of the American innovation. Like you, I'm an innovator, a doer, and a self-starter who is going to Congress not to fight, but to make things right.
Done? Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
Thank you. I'm Palo Alto Councilmember and entrepreneur Greg Lynn Tanaka. I am honored to be here. Today, I'm excited to share with you my vision for our community, a vision centered around 3 key pillars. First is affordable housing, sustainable transportation, and environmental stewardship. The biggest source of carbon is driving. That is why in my personal life, I'm deeply committed to environmental sustainability. I choose biking and mass transit for all my travels. This personal choice aligns perfectly with one of my major initiatives, transforming Caltrain by taking it underground. In areas like ours, where land is at a premium, the undergrounding of mass transit becomes a logical, efficient choice. While the financial aspect is daunting for individual cities, as I found out while advocating for this on City Council, the project becomes remarkably feasible when considering the significant drop in per mile cost that we achieve by extending undergrounding from Santa Clara to San Francisco. One of the standout benefits of this underground construction is how it minimizes disruption to our current traffic flows. To allow for more timely Caltrain service, we have construction underpass at all rail crossings, unlike traditional grade separations. Tunneling work is conducted beneath the surface, ensuring that our daily life and commutes remain unaffected during the construction phase. This transformative project also offers us a unique opportunity to repurpose valuable land. In Palo Alto alone, we can liberate around 60 acres, creating space for badly needed affordable housing as well as parks. By selling development rights on this newly available land and not expensive grade separations, we can significantly defray the project's costs. If elected, I will secure federal funds from programs like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which is particularly geared towards economically thriving regions like ours. Your support is vital in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. Mr. Mustafa.
Hi, my name is Ahmed Mustafa, and I'm running for Congress to ensure that the voices of those who have been silenced and sidelined echo through the halls of Congress. And I want to start off with a personal story. A few years ago, my grandfather came to visit me from Egypt. I'm the child of immigrants, so when he came, he didn't qualify for the travel insurance. I found him on my bed, presenting with stroke-like symptoms. And I called all my friends who were doctors, and they said, you have to get him to the hospital. So we got an ambulance, and it took him to the hospital immediately, at which point he began to regain consciousness. And the healthcare worker told us at that point that his heart was beating at 23 beats per minute and that he needed a pacemaker stat. At which point my grandfather said, how much is this going to cost me? And the healthcare worker responded with a note about $300,000. My grandfather stated, "I'm not going to put my children and grandchildren in debt just to live an extra 2 years." And at that point, I thought to myself, how many other families ask themselves that question and end up walking out of that hospital? We were able to get my grandfather the health care that he needed. However, that question still sticks in my head. How many people of those who are undocumented are too afraid to ask those questions? Or those who don't have the privileges that I had as an attorney, ask that question and walk out? I'm running for Congress to ensure that nobody who is suffering from a health crisis doesn't get the health care that they need, that nobody gets to sleep on the streets because they're in a mental health crisis. I'm running for Congress on a platform of human dignity and to ensure that everybody knows that they're valuable as humans. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now it's time to go to questions from our audience. I'll remind the candidates you have 1 minute to answer each question. The first question is, what actions will you take on the federal level to help alleviate both the local and nationwide shortages of affordable housing for low and moderate income households? Mr. Liccardo, you're first.
Thank you. Crisis of affordable housing, certainly acute here in the Bay Area, but this is a huge challenge in every major metro in the country. As mayor of the city, San Jose, I led a ballot measure in 2020 to be able to generate in the second year more than $90 million to be able to build more affordable housing. But it's critical that we have a federal partner, a partner that is going to lean in. We haven't seen any significant revisions, for example, the low-income housing tax credit program, since it was really created back in the 1980s, that could make it much more effective and streamlined. What I've proposed in a book that I put online, samliccardo.com, and you can look at that plan. It provides several specific policy ideas that are both we can accomplish within a budget and in a divided Congress. One of them, for example, is the use of expanded tax credit programs to convert an enormous amount of office vacancy we have in downtowns throughout the country. That vacancy exceeds 40%.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Before I get to our next candidate, Mr. Kumar, could you please stay on camera for this forum? Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, Mr. Simidian, you're next. Same question, Mr. Simidian.
Thank you very much. I want to say part of this is funding. So we need a new commitment, a renewed commitment at the federal level to funding affordable housing throughout the nation. Part of it I would define broadly as sort of a 20th century mindset about 21st century challenges at the federal level, whether that's at HUD or in Congress. When I was pursuing the Save the Buena Vista effort, the folks at the Housing Authority said, you know, we don't do mobile homes. And I said, well, can we be a little more creative? Can we think outside the traditional box that housing has been in at the federal level? And ultimately, we were able to make that happen. But we need more of that. Many on the Zoom will know I'm pushing for teacher housing. It's going up as we speak. I'm pushing for housing for those who are developmentally disabled. We break ground this month. I have been pushing successfully for affordable housing in Los Altos. Push, 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 money, and rethinking the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
Yeah, great question. I actually ran on the platform of affordable housing for my city council races. And so I led a lot of initiatives to try to speed up the permitting process and to make it easier to build, because that's what we need. We need smaller units. Those are naturally more affordable. And as I mentioned during my opening statement, I think that Caltrain undergrounding creates land in an area where land is very scarce and expensive. So just in Palo Alto alone, that's 60 acres. And if you look at the whole peninsula, that will be, hundreds of acres, right? That will be created. And I believe that in our area, in order to keep up the economic vibrancy, we need to allow more people to move in here. We need to be able to make it easier to create developments here. And so, I think having more dense housing near our Caltrain stations is really important. And I think we need to have federal programs to support this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
For Ahmed, Joby, Evan, myself, we're tired. Our generation is tired of seeing our friends move away who finally come to the conclusion that they'll never be able to afford the American dream here. And so I applaud a lot of the folks who have been politicians at the local level for admitting that this just hasn't gotten done. We've nibbled around the edges, but we haven't solved this, not in a meaningful way. And so I used to live on Moffett Field. And if you look at the available land here, it's in the 16 military bases that were closed 20 or 30 years ago in BRAC, but many of them are still Superfund sites or haven't been turned over to the local communities in the way that they need to. My team here is putting together a plan specifically for Moffett Field in the district. There's 1,500 available acres there, falling down barracks, empty warehouses. That is land that we can use to build not just hundreds of housing units and homes that can be owned, but tens of thousands. And so that is something specific at the federal level we can do for housing and that I will do for this community.
Thank you. Mr. Otake.
Yes, as I mentioned, as mayor and city council member, as part of the most expensive part of affordable housing is the cost of building housing. When I was in the council, it was probably in the neighborhood of 650 to 700,000 per unit. It's probably much higher now. With the best way that we did it was through inclusionary requirements, including at least 15 to 20% of new apartments to include affordable housing units, also transit-oriented housing as well. That's not enough, but we did do several hundred units of affordable housing out of the 2,000 new housing units that have come online in Menlo Park. I agree with Peter about federal land. Moffett Field is a key aspect. The federal government provided space at the VA hospital for transitional housing for vets. That I was privileged to open, also converting office space, as Mayor Liccardo said, and also I'll add mass transit to make it easier for folks to be able to get into the Bay Area to jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
I wanted to start off with a poll. I was curious, are any other candidates here also renters like myself? Ahmed, it's a painful place to be in. To kind of watch all your money for years just continue to flow out of your bank account. Right now, I'm a big hiker of a windy hill in my background. I don't think there's anywhere I can even hike today from my doorstep that can reach a house or an apartment that I can even afford right now in this district. Right now, I wanted to share two facts with you. 1 in 9 Californians is behind on rent. And number 2, in this district alone, around 25% of citizens are rent stressed. And rent stress means that more than around 50% of your income is going towards paying rent post-tax. So this is a serious crisis that needs to be fixed. And the reason why it's not being fixed is we're not willing to do controversial things. We need faster permitting. We need to reduce single-family housing zoning, and we need less litigation and less building taxes to get this done and get this fixed now.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar.
So, I would like to leverage the extraordinary technical and financial resources of the richest, most innovative congressional district in America to act on the issues which have not been addressed for decades, such as the affordable housing. What I would like to do is actually innovate. This is the world's innovation economy, and I would like to establish innovation centers of excellence with federal dollars. Places like the USGS Menlo Park site or the Moffett Field in Mountain View, they are ideally suited for that. We can do better. I will push for like modular units, 3D printing to build the housing of the future. Innovative building techniques such as to encourage construction techniques and materials that will actually reduce the cost and time to build affordable housing, and such as like prefab homes. Silicon Valley needs needs a vision plan actually, with housing, traffic, water.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Your time is up. Thank you. Ms. Lithcott-Hames.
Thank you. First of all, affordable housing isn't about charity. Affordable housing is a social justice issue. Housing is a human right. The feds created homelessness in the 1980s. The policies of the Reagan administration created what we now call homelessness. And today, 3% of the federal budget is directed toward addressing homelessness. This is not anywhere near enough. And 50% of Americans who rent are rent burdened. The solutions are at the level of addressing homelessness, at the level of addressing affordability for those who are not unhoused but still can't afford, and even to the missing middle, those here in Silicon Valley who have decent jobs and still can't afford a place to live. We have to both build more and we have to put more money in the pockets of residents. In terms of what the Fed can do, they can repeal Fair Cloth. This is the amendment that said, let's keep affordable housing spending at the level it was at 1999. We need to pass the Build More Housing Near Transit Act, the People Over Parking Act, put more vouchers in the field so families can afford low-income housing. I'm out of time. I'll say more later.
Mr. Mustafa.
Yeah, housing is a human right, and we must take an intersectional approach to addressing the issue. First, I would support Cori Bush's Unhoused Bill of Rights. Second, for all of our families who are struggling with housing, we need to increase the housing supply, but that's not just about building new homes. That's also focusing on public lands and building on transit-oriented solutions that are eco-friendly and get access in manners that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and traffic congestion. We also need to focus on affordability, like renting and buying and supporting those individuals, expand rent control, increasing the housing supply, and supporting renters are not just policy ideas, they're lifelines. Housing is a human right, and we need to have representation that acts like it.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next question. Yes, Mr. Lowe?
I think we forgot somebody.
Yes, may I also weigh in and chime in on housing?
My apologies. Yes, please.
No worries. I'll keep it under a minute too. The question, as I recall it, is what would you do as a member of Congress to address the issue of affordable housing? Understanding the role of Congress member, one of 435, and fundamentally from a federal perspective, we understand the importance of federal funding. We've seen over the past 15 years a decrease in funding from the Housing and Urban Development. So we need to increase housing vouchers and the resources of federal funding to go directly to the state, for the state to then help incentivize the cities. The absence that I talked earlier about, the elimination of the redevelopment agency by the state of California, which took away a significant tool on helping to incentivize local municipalities on development on commercial and residential. So we need the type of incentives of the carrot to help allow local municipalities as well as the state utilize the efforts on the type of planning of the smart growth, implementing the policies, but the policies cannot be implemented unless we have the type of funding, and that's where the state and the federal government really comes into play.
Thank you very much. Again, my apologies.
No worries.
All right, now we're going on to the next question. Imagine you're meeting with the president. On what foreign policy issue would you choose to advise him? And Mr. Dixon, you're first.
I appreciate this. One thing that people might suspect about me is that I am pro-defense spending. In fact, having seen it up front at the State Department, and the Pentagon, and the military, I can tell you that the defense spending and the amount of money that go to our troops are not the same thing. However, one thing I would do is bring American capitalism to that in order to get better outcomes for the troops and reduce the amount of money that we spend on defense so that we can bring it here at home. One of the ways then to also get better outcomes overseas is with regards to Ukraine. It's less than 5% of our defense spend every year. And our defense spending is really postured against China and Ukraine. China and Russia. And what's happening in Ukraine right now is negating the Russian threat for 2 generations to come. So just not even from a humanitarian or an ethical or what it means to be American perspective, but also just from a dollars and cents, doubling down on Ukraine is a really sensible thing to do.
Thank you. Ms. Lithcott-Hames.
Thank you. If I was to sit down with President Biden, frankly, the first thing I'd do is thank him for the Inflation Reduction Act. But to the point of foreign policy, I think in this very fraught world moment, I would take the opportunity to thank him for his leadership regarding Israel and urge him to be the kind of ally Israel needs. By which I mean, it's not just about sending our money, $38 billion over 10 years. It's not just about showing up with our military might to stand ready. We have to whisper in our allies' ear and tell them tough truths. And the tough truth right now he needs to tell Mr. Netanyahu is what you're doing to the people of Gaza is not working, and it is not okay. And it is also not in your long-term interests. We have to bring together world leaders, America, Rwanda, South Africa, others who have the wherewithal to talk about truth and reconciliation and build toward a 2-state solution.
Thank you. Mr. Mustafa.
Yeah, I would talk to President Biden about humanity and human dignity. And the first thing is we cannot compromise our values here in the United States at the border in order to accomplish a goal overseas. The second thing I would tell President Biden is with regard to the situation in Gaza, that the best thing for every child in Gaza and in Israel is to grow up in peace, that children should actually be worried about school the next day and homework and who they're going to hang out with and their crush, not be worried about bombs and how they're going to survive the next day without their family members. The best thing for the United States, the best thing for the state of Israel is a immediate and permanent ceasefire. It's the only thing that actually brought the hostages back into Israel and the only thing that has actually saved lives, both in Israel and in Palestine. So that is what I would advise President Biden.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar.
So my response would be 3-pronged. Firstly, what I would like to draw attention to is the $10 trillion that we have spent in the American wars over the last couple decades, and which has wreaked havoc and destruction in so many parts of the world. And we have basically turned Afghanistan into the dark ages. So I would like to encourage President Biden to push an agenda which is based on economic empowerment and education. If he had spent $10 trillion in that area, that would have really made a huge difference. Secondly, I would also thank him for putting the focus on crushing terrorist organizations like Hamas that have wreaked havoc upon the world. And that's not right. And thirdly, I would ask him to focus on cybersecurity, cyber terrorism, because that is the war of the future, and we should invest right there.
Thank you. Mr. Simidian.
Thank you. I think I would encourage the president to always remember that we have more tools at our disposal than simply the military tool. We also have the diplomatic tool. We have the financial tool. Frankly, the Treasury Department can be and has been a significant player sometimes in arresting bad behavior around the globe. We also have our moral suasion, so-called soft power. We have all these tools if we would use them in a thoughtful and integrated way. And to the comments that all of my colleagues here have made, we have to take a genuinely global perspective on these issues and not let our foreign policy get driven by the crisis of the moment, whether that is Ukraine, whether that is Gaza and Israel, whether that is China's aggression in the South China Sea and the saber rattling towards Taiwan, whether that's here in our own hemisphere, And we have to remember as well that there are immigration implications to all of these crises. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
I have a
Gotcha.
fear that history will repeat itself, and the conversation is then directed to that of China and that of the tensions between China and the United States, that this has an aura of attacking Asian Americans here in the United States, that we are seen as perpetual foreigners. Our beautiful Bay Area consists of close to 40% Asian Pacific Islanders, and yet we are being attacked. Our loyalty is being questioned. And when it comes time to government, there is a rational approach. But when it comes to business and people to people, that should be off limits. And what's important is that we recognize that this is reminiscent of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, banning migration from China. We just saw the congressional hearings this last week about questioning an individual's loyalty who is Singaporean. The CEO of TikTok was Singaporean, and he gets being focused on being questioned about his loyalty to China. And we see that here with Asian American business leaders, the CEOs of Zoom, CEOs of many other companies here are being questioned, and that's what's important to acknowledge and address to protect Asian Americans here at home.
Thank you. Mr. Otake.
I would advise the president that we have a need for global leadership, global diplomacy, and global deterrence. And that's where the United States has led before and can continue to act as a leader going forward, which, as we're doing now, standing by Israel, but as we saw last week, having to deter Iran. Iran is the geopolitical repressive regime of the region, and we need to act as a deterrent to their proxies. Russia obviously has shown itself with Ukraine to have its ambitions, and we need to be able to continue to stand up to them. And finally, to support Taiwan. We must lead, we must be diplomatic, and we also must deter.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
If I met with the president, I would want to make sure that Silicon Valley's interest is represented. And Silicon Valley, just given its name, is about chips. It's about semiconductors. Most of these semiconductors come from Taiwan, the most advanced ones, the ones that power our economy, the ones that power our AI initiatives. And I actually used to be a chip designer, so I've been to Taiwan many times. And what we need to do is we need to move some of this advanced semiconductor manufacturing back to the United States. There's some initiatives with the CHIPS Act, but we got to do more. We need to also stabilize our relationship with China. China is the second largest economy in the world and is growing. I used to have an office in Shenzhen, China, and so I'm pretty familiar with what's going on there. And I've seen over the past few years a really chilling effect over the trade, immigration, and it's not good. We don't want to go war with China. They have nuclear weapons. They're gigantic population. We want to encourage more trading because good trading partners don't really fight with each other. We also need to work on having more legalized work visas, so it's easier for talented people to come here.
Thank you. Mr. Liccardo. I think you're muted.
Thank you for your patience. As we look at the contagion of war that's spreading throughout the Middle East, of course, it's appropriate that the United States protect its troops, particularly after the killing of 3 troops and 3 members of our armed forces in Jordan. It's appropriate that we respond militarily, but we can clearly see the pattern here. Attacks in Iraq and Syria, Yemen, Lebanon. This is becoming very rapidly a regional war. And this may be our last best chance to engage for peace, to be able to contain what could be something that could spiral very, very badly. Right now, we have an opportunity to be able to hit the pause button on whatever is happening in Gaza. We have to do everything we can within our diplomatic and economic means to halt the fighting long enough to get aid to 2 million Palestinians, including 600,000 are on the verge of starvation. And if necessary, we need to find alternative means of delivering that aid if UNRWA is not going to be funded by the United States and 20 other countries. We've
Thank
got to
you.
do this immediately.
Time's up. Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
I definitely think Israel and Ukraine are priorities right now. My hope is that when I'm meeting with President Biden in January of 2025, both conflicts have been resolved in a peaceful manner. One issue that I know is likely not going to be resolved by then is climate change and cooperating with China. China right now is the largest emitter of carbon emissions in the world, almost 2 times more than the United States. And cooperation efforts between our two nations is going to determine if the world will actually hit our climate goals. We need to continue to engage with China on clean energy initiatives, on technology sharing, and on emission reduction in order to ensure that we can continue to demonstrate leadership here, as well as combat climate change effectively. It's a global problem. It needs a global solution, and we need to be acting day one to get everyone on the planet on board.
Thank you. Did I get everybody this time? Okay. Next question. The products developed by Silicon Valley firms, for example, AI and social media, impact not just our congressional district, but the world. How would you legislate to balance innovation with regulation? And Mr. Kumar, you're first for this question.
So, we have seen the evil ways of social media. And just a couple of days back, we had a hearing where Mark Zuckerberg turned around and apologized to families who had been affected. So this is, we should have addressed this a long time back. And so Section 230 is outdated, and big tech should no longer be allowed to hide behind Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Corporations can be both profitable and also good global citizens. So we have to strategically remove the liability protections of Section 230 so that we can compel platforms to take content moderation quite seriously and to protect the users from illegal activities and disinformation. As a tech-savvy leader of Silicon Valley, I will actually address it that we haven't seen in many, many years now.
Thank you. Mr. Mustafa.
Yeah, I spent the past 4.5 years at Google working on stopping the harms of misinformation and derogatory content. And the actual harms of that with AI will be accelerated. We need people who are tech literate in Congress who will be able to bring strong solutions to mitigate those harms while still promoting innovation. And the way we have to do this is look at it from a very comprehensive perspective, where we ensure that there are guardrails in place that like digital fingerprinting, such that people who are doing deep fakes and can instantly deepfake your voice in seconds are detected instantly. And there's a lot of ways you can do this while incentivizing startup companies to actually come into AI and holding the guardrails in place, such that the big tech companies are not the only ones who can control it. We need more startup companies working on these issues, but we also need to establish guardrails in place to mitigate them.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
So this is Silicon Valley, and I believe in innovation. I love seeing what my friends are creating here. Anything from AI to solve history research, to improve elementary school, to creating cutting edge technology in healthcare. On the other hand, it's also clear that the power of AI can be a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our communities and a threat to our families. And so we definitely need a framework to both balance both innovation with regulation. I think the key is to have government involvement in the oversight process. As an investor in financial markets, I am very used to dealing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. It does an effective job at ensuring that public companies are releasing their financial statements to get an understanding of what's going on inside. And we need to do the same thing when it comes to AI models. How are the algorithms working? How are they done efficiently? How do they provide equity and justice? And ensuring that this is done will then allow us to democratize AI.
Thank you. Mr. Liccardo.
We have to align our innovation and technology with our values. And Congress simply hasn't moved on many of these issues. Section 230 hasn't been amended since 1996. I think many companies involved in AI, crypto, and other spaces have been begging for regulation, and they're simply not getting it. Congress needs to move. Where can it start? Well, let's start with transparency. For example, in AI, there's no reason why we can't see Congress moving forward aggressively to codify the agreement that 7 companies signed with the White House in the middle of the year, for example, to require watermarks on AI-generated images and similarly identify AI-generated content, to be able to require disclosure of how large LLMs scrape data, to be able to detect systemic risks. Starting with transparency is the best way we can at least start to get a handle on the potential risks and downsides of these technologies, and companies should be willing to lean in with us.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
I really like this question. My startup is in the AI industry, and I've seen a lot of different technologies, internet, mobile, and AI definitely is the biggest innovation, at least in my lifetime. And it represents probably the biggest opportunity to grow the economic pie. So often in politics, we have to fight over the size of slice someone gets. Very, very divisive. But by growing the pie, we can actually lift humanity. Everyone could be better off. I mean, if you look at civilizations like the Ottoman Empire, which abandoned new technologies like the printing press, versus other ones that embraced it, like Europe, where they got the Renaissance. We don't want to hold back this technology, but we want to make sure that it's used safely. There's other countries out there that maybe are a little bit more adversarial with us, like China, and they're certainly not going to slow down if we slow down. So what we should do is we should regulate the misuse. And just like a knife could be used for either good, like cutting bread, it can also be used for bad, like stabbing people. So what we should do is regulate the misuse of technology.
Thank you. Ms. Lithcott-Hames.
Thank you. Like everybody, I'm sure, so proud to live in Silicon Valley, so proud to be in the region that really develops the next great thing for the world and makes the world a better place. Look, the kids who started Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, the kids who started Instagram out here, they had a great idea. They didn't know then that it was going to turn into this thing that had some awful consequences. Section 230 needs some reform now that we know what we know. But I think the key is that reform can't stifle innovation, and nobody understands that better than us. When it comes to AI, I want us to learn from the lessons of social media, the things that I think we ought to be curious about when it comes to AI. As an author, I know very well one of my books is being used to train the AIs. Nobody asked for my permission. So for me, the first question is copyright. Copyright in, copyright out. Who owns it? Then there's the looming issue of bias. Wouldn't it have been great if we could have rooted out implicit bias in humans before humans created AI? But we didn't make that happen. So we got to try to make sure that doctor minus woman does not equal nurse. That's how AI, based on what it has learned, thinks. Doctor minus woman equals nurse. Isn't that terrible? We also have to care about the energy AI uses and the deep fakes, but mostly we got to bring Americans up to a greater understanding of what it is so they're not afraid.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
So I was a tech company CEO, and I built and scaled a company. I started my campaign with an AI ad to show what sort of this next generation of leaders can do with AI, and that's something that we were able to do in a matter of hours that previously would have taken months or and tens of thousands of dollars. So AI is extremely transformative, but you don't have to have started a tech company. You just have to be a young person to know that if you're engaged with a platform that you're not paying for, you are the product. And so what we need to be doing here is making sure that we are protecting the people who are at the center of this. Their images, and making sure that they're not being corrupted, their creative works of art, their data, which data is the new oil for AI. And so all of those things need regulation to fundamentally protect those, so that they're not being mined and monetized, and we're not being mined and monetized. I used social media in the State Department to save lives overseas after earthquakes and natural disasters. So this does really cut both ways.
Thank you very much. Mr. Simidian.
Could you repeat the question, please, Sigrid? It's been 8 or 9 folks since it was offered up, and I want to make sure I respond very directly to the question.
Absolutely. The products developed by Silicon Valley firms, for example, AI and social media, impact not just our congressional district, but the world. How would you legislate to balance innovation with regulation?
Well, the key word there is balance, and I've already done it. I was the author of California's security breach notification law. That is the law that tells us all when someone has lost our data, when the system's been hacked, when we've been compromised. And it serves two very important purposes. It gives us the knowledge we need to protect ourselves, and it provides an incentive to companies to step up and do what they need to do to guard our data more carefully. And it was such a successful model that it has now been replicated in 50 states around the country. It was, again, this balance that allowed people to continue to develop and innovate, but that provided the protection consumers needed, whether it's cryptocurrency, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's social media. We can find a way to thread that needle. We can find a way to let people innovate and create and still protect the public, which is job one.
Thank you. Mr. Otake.
Yes, I was a former CFO and co-founder of a tech startup, and I definitely support the innovation economy that has built Silicon Valley. As I said earlier, Silicon Valley reinvents itself. In fact, I don't think we built manufactured silicon chips for at least 30 years. And so as we get to the more current technologies, social media, the biggest threat that I see is that algorithms, particularly news feeds, continue this polarization of news, and we need to make sure that is more balanced. The other aspect is AI is built upon many of those algorithms, and particularly data mining. And as Julie mentioned, I agree with her, that introduces bias into AI. So that's got to be addressed. And finally, I like Joey's idea about disclosure of those AI to prevent bias. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
Question was about how we would tackle innovation and regulation. I chair the California Legislative Technology and Innovation Caucus, and being a tech leader in the state, helping to represent Silicon Valley with major tech companies. I also authored an innovative solution to these issues with respect to portable benefits before the fight between labor and transportation network companies, and acknowledging that whether or not it's independent contracting or full-time employees, we need to address the elephant in the room, which is that of how does this also focus on the future work and the displacement of workers. I'm proud of the fact that I have the sole endorsement from the California Labor Federation, an endorsement of union workers. And when we talk about machine learning and about the loss of jobs of truck drivers, grocery clerks, the writer strike, how do we help ensure that we're addressing, acknowledging the fact that many of these technologies must focus on a human-centered approach, while also addressing the issues of consumer protection and safety and jobs, but being able to do so to help address these issues of power of convening and thought leadership, bring together labor and business leaders alike.
Thank you very much. All right, we're ready to go on to another question. The unpaid work of caregiving generally falls on the shoulders of women. If elected, how will you make childcare and elder care affordable and accessible for families? Please be specific. Mr. Smitty, you're first for this question.
Thank you. I would say we're already making great strides in this area. In Santa Clara County, some of your listeners and members will know what in-home supportive services is all about, IHSS. We've got to find a way at the federal level to provide support for family members who get pulled into caregiving at the expense of their ability to make a living and put food on the table and a roof over their heads. We have looked at this as somehow a burden that will randomly fall on individual households or individual family members. And there needs to be a support system in place specifically for that kind of caregiving. It will be particularly important as more and more older Americans live to greater and greater age, and at some point will require that kind of care. We're doing it already. We just need to scale it at the national level.
Thank you. Mr. Otaki.
Yes, I support, for example, the continuation of the child tax care credit. That's, I think, been important to help enable families to afford some of these needs. But I also think we need to ensure there's deduction for caregiving expenses. When we were raising our kids and they were young, and they were at preschool, for example, that was not something that was deductible, and yet that was caregiving. And I think we need to be able to encourage that there's the ability for families to have access to high quality caregiving so that it takes some of that burden and enables them to pursue their careers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, thank you for this question. So, for a given family, this is I think around $17,000 per family that they spend on these sorts of expenses. So, you start talking about rent payments and home-based care for these for children. The pie only can get cut so many ways, and there just isn't a heck of a lot left. So one of the things that you have to think about whenever you're a politician, somebody even who's only been a politician for a month, is how do you pay for these things if you're making promises to the American people? And so one of the things that I will tell you is where 54% of the discretionary taxpayer dollars are at the federal level is in defense. And that's why I keep bringing it up. This is where we can get savings, and we can flow these things back down to things like childcare and education, those kitchen table issues that everyone cares about. So I think we need to answer as politicians, not just the what, but how we're going to pay for it. This is how we pay for it.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
Thank you. California has led the way on this issue, and I hope that we can help amplify the areas of best practices in Washington, D.C., because I think we've done it correctly, whether it be expanding child care tax credits in the state, also passing healthcare workers minimum wage to $25. We know that the federal minimum wage is incredibly low, poverty wages, and that is important to acknowledge and address if we are talking about the equity, about how do we create environments for newer families, for younger workers alike, and addressing and acknowledging the facts that we cannot ignore. Those would be some of the other key areas of focus. Also, I think it's Assembly Bill 131, which is that of transitional kindergarten and expanding the slots. Governor Newsom and the California State Legislature focused on making sure that we are a state that helps to incentivize families on being families, but also addressing the issues of accommodations in public spaces. And those are the key aspects that I hope that we can advance in Congress as well.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
I think while I'm told oftentimes not to dive into the economics, this is one where you have to dive into the economics. Economic research has clearly shown this is one of the best opportunities to yield significant economic returns for every dollar that gets invested. One recent study demonstrated that for every dollar invested in early childhood and in pre-K, yields up to $7.30 in benefits. That's seen in increased wages, in improved health, and in reduced crime. We see that children who attend universal pre-K are more likely to take honors classes. They're less likely to repeat a grade. They have higher reported status of mental health. We see they do better in math and better in reading up until their high school years. But it's not just about children. Preschool is clearly shown to have benefits to increase labor force participation among parents, especially women, which boosts family earnings and drives economic growth.
Thank you. Mr. Mustafa.
Yeah, one of the biggest ways that we can support working mothers is by bringing back the child tax credit. This benefit lifted 30% of families out of poverty, 80% of those 80% of those receiving the child tax credit went straight back into poverty. According to the Center for American Progress, the average cost of childcare in California can be up to 14% of a family's income, making it one of the most significant expenses in our country and for our families. It is a complete and moral failure of our government to be able to have the capacity to lift millions of those out of poverty and to throw them right back into it. I'm not only committed to advancing affordable and accessible childcare for every single family, but I'm also supporting policies like the reinstatement of this child tax credit that can empower working mothers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
I also believe that we should have tax deductions for caregiving. It is creating value in the economy, so people should get credit for it. Another fact is, of course, that people are living longer in general. So we have an aging population. I do a lot of work around skilled nursing, and there's a lot of red tape in that area. So that has to kind of be smoothed out. Also, if you look at some countries like Japan, where there's a lot of older people and not enough people to take care of them. For our country, we need to really fix our immigration system. We need to have automatic work visas. And then if you look at our healthcare system, it is really broken. It's incredibly inefficient. We have lots of different people involved in this system. And if you compare against other countries, like let's say Switzerland, they have a system where people actually have more control over their insurance. And as a result, they get higher quality and also lower costs. So I think we could borrow some ideas from that system to improve our healthcare system in the United States.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar.
So women in the workplace is a key item on my agenda. And rishikumar.com/priorities explains the details. Essentially, my wife and I, we struggled with our newborns. We needed nursing rooms in companies, and we need to provide maternity parking spots in Silicon Valley tech companies. There is a lot we can do to make it easier for women to, for example, we could provide flexible scheduling for women, especially for young mothers. It is so crucial and critical for mothers to spend time with their children. But the most important agenda item that I have is to actually expand K-12 education to include preschool, because it can have a significant benefit for women both directly and indirectly by providing early childhood education. It frees them, they can go back to the workforce, and it will create economic empowerment. So these are absolutely extremely important.
Thank you. Ms. Lithcott-Hames.
Thank you. There are a few of us who are running who are parents, and I am a parent. I'm the only woman running. And I have to say that American policy is hostile to working women. They want us to still be homemakers. They are punishing us for working. MAGA is all over this. They want to turn us back to the 1950s and have us at home having babies, period. My leave from work when I had Sawyer in 1999, 12 weeks paid for with my vacation and sick leave, okay? I went back to work full time. My amazing partner, Dan, and my amazing mother, Jeannie, covered the childcare so I could work full time. We need federally financed, paid family leave, whether you're looking after children or elders. Most industrialized countries do this. This isn't just about women. There are a lot of same-sex male couples that are raising children. We need that child tax credit that remove people from poverty during the pandemic. We need that reinstated, and we need universally funded federally funded childcare.
Thank you. Mr. Liccardo.
There's a crisis in care in our country, and I agree with everything that's been said about the child tax credit. It's been one of the most effective anti-poverty measures that we've tried in this country. But I also believe we have a real shortage of providers, and we have to squarely address that issue. Certainly, providers need to be better compensated, but also care providers, and we experienced this in San Jose, themselves typically tend to be struggling to make ends meet. Many are low income. And a federal partnership with local communities that would help provide certifications for more people who would like to become providers. Overwhelmingly, they are women in many cities, to be able to provide them access to vacant retail locations, for example, to be able to start their businesses and expand them, to be able to ensure they have the tools they need, to be able to get the licenses they need to be effective. These kinds of things can really expand the supply of providers, which is so critical for so many families struggling to find the care.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to our next question. Just checking. In District 16, inadequate transportation plus the lack of local affordable housing makes for a terrible equation for our climate. What solutions do you propose? Please be specific. And for this question, Mr. Lowe, you're first.
Questions about the intersectionality between transportation, housing, and the impact on the environment. Is that right?
Yes.
Solving these problems requires, at the federal level, the capacity of what the duties is of a member of Congress. Members of Congress, of course, is on federal funding, and understanding that oftentimes this is due what we refer to as joint powers authorities of regionalism, that it makes no sense for individual cities to do the type of planning and growth. That's what we're trying to get away from. How do we make sure that everything is intertwined? So number one, the specifics on getting the type of federal funding to support our local joint powers authorities and our regional entities through other Bay Area entities like the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, helping to address the issues of climate change, that we need the type of planning. When we're talking about a general plan, that general plan does not acknowledge the fact of climate change. So helping to get funding to go to local, regional capacities in implementing these policies is critical. That is fundamentally the job of a member of Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
Yeah, this is actually my campaign platform. The biggest source of carbon in the environment right now in our area is people driving. And kind of the easy solution here is undergrounding Caltrain. It solves a lot of the problems you just talked about. By undergrounding Caltrain, we create hundreds of acres of land in the district. It creates opportunities for people to live in our area. You have dense housing where the stations are. And it creates also better traffic, less noise, less safety issues. And mass transit is also more equitable, right? It allows people to live in further places or other places and still get to work. So there's so many great ideas behind undergrounding Caltrain. I encourage people to go to my website, greattanaka.org, to check out the details of this. I want to encourage more discussion, but to me, this is the obvious choice, is to underground Caltrain because it creates land. And that's the hardest part of affordable housing, is getting the land.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar.
So sadly, our transportation system is broken. Duct taped systems in place. The light rail has been bleeding cash for decades. Any other place, it would have been shut down. And we are electrifying Caltrain now, which was done 100 years ago in India and China. So we really don't have a plan. And I wrote an op-ed piece that was published in the Mercury News, February 2020, about building a mega Silicon Valley economy. So we need a vision plan with housing and traffic. rishikumar.com/housing has the plan, which is part of this the op-ed piece statement that we had. So if we can reduce the commute time from San Ramon to Sunnyvale to 15-20 minutes, we need to develop a vision plan for mass transportation, not this duct tape system. And so as a congressional rep, my plan would be to create that vision plan and bring in the investment and the infrastructure to not only expand transportation, but also housing.
Thank you. Ms. Lithcott-Hames.
Thank you. I think it's unconscionable, frankly, that we have super commuters. We say we have supercomputers in Silicon Valley. Sadly, we also have super commuters who spend an hour and a half to 2 hours each way getting from their home somewhere in Tracy or Stockton to their great jobs here and then going back. It's bad for the climate. It's bad for them. It's bad for their kids. They can't be home to help with homework after school because they are on the road. So all of this does indeed come together, as so many of us know. The vision is the 15-minute walkable, bikeable city where humans can live within a 15-minute walk or bike to shops and schools and jobs and great transit and all the other amenities. In terms of federally, how we get there, the Stronger Communities Through Better Transit Act is something we should pass. Here locally, Seamless Bay Area is going to take our 27 different transportation agencies and slowly unite them, and housing near transit, infill housing, raise the height limits, mixed use, multifamily, all near transit. That's how we're going to solve this.
Thank you. Mr. Mustafa.
Yeah, climate justice is social justice, and housing is a social justice issue. We need to prioritize every single one of our residents. And I believe going beyond a Green New Deal, I would actually specifically endorse Cori Bush's Green New Deal for cities, which will provide our communities, our local communities, with the resources that they need to input the best possible climate-friendly solutions. Public transit is integral to ensuring our communities have the access to affordable housing and economic opportunity that they need. We must continue to expand upon existing public transit in the Bay Area to ensure that every single community member is empowered with a safe and reliable way to commute. We need climate-friendly solutions and we need to seek funding that invests in lower vehicle emissions and ensures that every single resident gets the needs that they have.
Thank you. Mr. Otaki.
So since 2019, I have been volunteering on the San Mateo County Transportation Authority Citizen Advisory Committee in order to learn more about the transportation issues in the Bay Area. And the fact of the matter is, this district is reliant on a 160-year-old rail line that goes north-south only. And the fact of the matter is that our mass transit is inadequate. We don't have funding for Dumbarton Rail, which would connect the East Bay with Caltrain and BART. We also don't have funding for grade separations, which are $300 million for each grade separation. And so totals billions of dollars in each county. That's where the congressional representative can help. We missed our opportunity with the 1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, but yet we contribute more proportionately for our two counties than most other counties in the nation in terms of taxes. We should get some of that money back for infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
Not all Democrats can be effective climate leaders. To be an effective climate legislature, you need to have deep experience in the science, understand the economics, and then lastly, understand the business and the implementation of clean energy infrastructure. I'm the candidate that brings that experience. I have led 2 corporate sustainability programs and started them. I have worked in climate investing at some of the largest asset managers, as well as in growth equity and venture capital. I've been an advisor to climate startups and helped start my own. And it is time for this district to be represented by a real climate leader, one who understands that we have the most climate startups in our district, the best climate researchers, and some of my favorite climate activists. Right now, we're creating a climate caste system in this country and in this district, where those who are lower income, can't afford to live here, get pushed further away, and it becomes a situation where housing policy is climate policy and transportation policy is climate policy. An effective climate legislature can fix all of this.
Thank you. Hang on, Mr. Liccardo.
Thank you. Well, we need to do 3 things to address this housing, transportation, climate crisis. First is halt the sprawl, as I led in 2018 with ballot measures that halted sprawling development in the hillsides against billionaire developers who were funding enormous campaigns at the ballot box to do so, to protect Coyote Valley, for example, from sprawling housing development there. And then second, we need to invest significantly in transit. And I've worked much of my career in doing that, but we have to build projects within our budget and within our lifetimes and rescope them if they are simply exceeding those very familiar standards. And finally, we need to build a lot more housing, and we need to build it smartly. On samliccardo.com, you can see my plan for how the federal government can be engaged in helping to finance, for example, office conversions, as I mentioned before, using tax credits, and helping homeowners to build ADUs in urbanized areas that can help us expand the supply of naturally affordable housing.
Thank you. Mr. Simidian.
Thank you. I think I want to begin by agreeing that the district should be represented by a real climate leader. And I want to make the case that I am that real climate leader. My campaign has been endorsed by 350 Bay Area Action, the climate change organization in our area. I've been identified by the Sierra Club as an environmental hero just within the last half dozen years. And to answer this question directly, until and unless we make sure that the jobs, the housing, and the transportation are all in the same place, we're going to continue to have this problem. And so to simplify, the federal funding needs to respond to projects that bring housing, transportation, and jobs all to the same place so that we're incentivizing climate-friendly behavior, not incentivizing or funding project development that makes the problem worse rather than better. It's all about the incentives and the funding.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, so look, the state made it difficult to build housing anywhere. Now they're trying to make us build housing everywhere, and it's just as illogical. And so I really want to build on what Julie was saying here. I think, we have to be very honest with the voters about how Congress can actually help here. Congress does two things. They do authorizing and they do appropriating. What Joe said in the beginning about going to Congress and being at risk of being a backbencher for 8 or 10 years, that's real, where you're just taking symbolic votes. So how do you actually get something done? Well, one of the ways to do it is to get on House Armed Services, which is the only way to get the National Defense Authorization passed and to be able to put things that can help this district. That is the vehicle by which we can build tens of thousands of units on Moffett, so we can have that walkable city that we're all talking about and not ask people to commute in for 2 hours, 3 hours in a single commute.
Thank you. All right, now we're moving on to what surprisingly is our last question. I'm always surprised. Last year was one of the least productive legislative years in our nation's history. Give an example of how you have worked with those who have disagreed with you to get something done. And for this question, Ms. Lithcott-Hames, you're first.
I was wondering if that would happen. Okay, well, my colleagues have heard me say this, but I'm going to try to tell the story. I wanted to be on the Stanford Ad Hoc Committee as a council member in Palo Alto. We were renewing our efforts to get along better with this world-class university in our backyard, with which we've had a fraught history over many decades. Some of my colleagues have participated in those efforts. And I asked to be on the ad hoc committee. The mayor was on it and Councilmember Burt. And I got a call from Councilmember Burt a few weeks later saying, so you want to be on this committee? Want to hear about the history? I said, yes, I do. I want to listen and learn from you. I had my own ideas, but I have learned as I've grown up, don't just start with your ideas. Listen respectfully to your elders, listen respectfully to the people that have the history. So that's what I did for 45 minutes. At the end of it, he said, when you were running, you were the last person I thought I could work with. And I said, I kind of worried about you too, but here we are working together. What do you say? We keep going. He's become not only a colleague, but a mentor. I treat everyone with dignity and kindness. Frankly, that is the only place that gets us anywhere.
Thank you. Mr. Otake.
So thank you very much. I built a very strong reputation on the Menlo Park City Council for being the numbers guy. My financial background, my ability to analyze budget, but more importantly, to analyze what programs work, what programs don't work, what are the impacts, and built trust with my colleagues, 3 of whom were Democrats and another Republican. And for 8 years, we worked together in building and designing solutions, including rezoning, as I mentioned earlier, for housing, transit-oriented housing, and to address the needs of our residents. Most Americans are in this, what I call the sensible middle. And frankly, many of them are voting Republican. They're voting, obviously in this country, there's a currently a Republican majority. You have to know how to work with Republicans to get anything done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Liccardo?
Thank you. When I came into office as mayor of San Jose, we were saddled with a $3 billion unfunded liability in retirement benefits that was bleeding the city dry and causing enormous divisions politically in the city. It drove more than 500 police officers out as a result of pay cuts and layoffs, and more than 1,000 city employees. I came into office with the police union clearly opposed to me, and they and other unions spent more than, well, several $1 million to defeat me in that race. But when I came in, the first thing I did was sit down to start negotiations to figure out how we could solve this problem together. And through more than 10 months of negotiation, we worked it out in difficult negotiation. We've identified truth tellers that we could all believe, namely an actuary who could identify the real cost and the real math. We took an agreement to the voters. The voters approved it, and we saved taxpayers $3 billion over 20 years. We're saving that money today, and that's why we're able to balance our budget.
Thank you. Mr. Simidian?
Thank you. When I was in the California State Senate and passed the most ambitious renewable energy legislation in the country, I did it with Republican votes. And I did it with Republican votes. I was able to do it with Republican votes because I was able to make the case to them that it was about climate change, yes, but also air quality in their districts, also economic development in their districts, also tax revenue for their districts. So I brought folks along, notwithstanding the fact that they weren't there in the first place. When I authored the successful legislation to create transitional kindergarten, that bill passed by a 1-vote margin. And that 1 vote was one of my most conservative Republican colleagues, but he voted aye on the bill at 11:53 in the evening before the clock struck midnight and put an end to the conversation. The hands-free cell phone bill also passed by a 1-vote margin with a Republican on the bill. I have proven I can do this, and I will do it in the Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
When we talk about things that people say, they'll never agree on, abortion and gun control between the two parties are right at the top. So this is close to the vest for me. I carried an assault rifle as a Marine, and our generation of war fighters, we carry the physical and the mental wounds of war. And so the idea here that our kids are also being subjected to that same threat in our schools, and that we have school teachers who have to come in and brief kids on how to barricade the door every year. We're the only Western nation that's doing this. And this feels like an intractable issue that will never be solved. Yet the group of veterans that I helped elect to Congress passed the first piece of bipartisan gun reform in decades, the Safer Communities Act. So that, along with 150 other pieces of legislation over the last 3 cycles, is the record of achievement that I and others have on Capitol Hill, which is why I have the most sitting Congress members today endorsing our candidacy.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar?
So, my agenda is bipartisanship in Washington. We have to team and reach out across the aisle, and that's how we get stuff done. And we see too much bickering, and everybody is playing party politics. And I will never follow the herd over a cliff because that's completely wrong. I have 3 quick examples. One is in the city of Saratoga, there was a plan to build a 300-room hotel on a hillside that would disrupt wildlife and vegetation. And I was the only one against that proposal because it just didn't make sense. And slowly and gradually, 2 of my colleagues heard me out. And then at the final vote, they actually supported my efforts to not go ahead with that proposal. Secondly, crime. We said crime is a big problem, but I did neighborhood watch programs, engaged the rest of my colleagues. Tax increases, I said that's a plan that should not be pushed. We should find optimization of the public sector dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Thank you. Time's up. Mr. Lowe?
In the aftermath of Roe v. Wade being overturned, the United States Supreme Court cited that marriage equality would be next. As a result of that, I have authored a constitutional amendment to enshrine protections for same-sex couples and interracial couples to marry in the state of California that we will be voting on this coming November. But through that legislative proposal, I sought Republican and conservative support. As a result of that, both the Catholic Conference and the Church of Latter-day Saints are also neutral, whereas previously in 2008, they were the chief organizations in opposition. But I sought them out to meet with their elders, meet with their leaders to talk about that this was an approach in which this was law of the land, but how do we see commonality, that this proposal would be constitutional protections, but at the same time, the law would not force an evangelical or a member of the clergy to be forced to perform a marriage. So finding compromise in an era and environment that I hope that we can find commonality of basic human dignity.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
I think I'm one of the few candidates here who's worked for both Republicans and Democrats before. I feel very comfortable working across the aisle. I think, as Joe mentioned, it is about messaging. When it comes to climate, I am the strongest supporter, but I have seen it is very easy to convince conservatives why they need to care about climate. It's not about talking about the environment and climate change. It's about talking about jobs and infrastructure and growth and technology and innovation that's going to come along with our clean energy transition. So the messaging is very important. It works. All congressmen and congresswomen care the most about their district. And if you can talk to them and their constituents, you can get stuff done. My platform is focused on bipartisan ideas. They're progressive ideas, but they're ideas that have seen bipartisan support in the past, and things that can get done and I believe will get passed. But I would say, though, after getting to know all the other candidates on this stage, I do trust that all of us have dignity, know how to work across the aisle, and can be thoughtful and fair representatives.
Thank you. Mr. Mustafa.
Yeah, you have to listen to people, and listening to people and understanding people's stories humanizes them. And that's what really brings people together. You know, when I was a student leader on my college campus, I negotiated and brokered the only ever and first ever signed agreement between a Hillel, a Students for Justice in Palestine, an American Students for Israel, and a Muslim Student Association. And the only way that could have been done is to listen to people and hear their stories. That is what I will do, and what I will bring to Congress is understanding that we all have a joint and common mission as human beings, that we all should be treated with dignity and respect, that we all should be listened to despite what opinions that we may have. And when we humanize each other, when we listen to each other, and when we understand each other's stories, we can get to peace. We can accomplish things that we've never accomplished before. We are Silicon Valley, the land of innovation, and we can bring forth that change and innovation by just looking forward to it and bringing it together.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tanaka.
I believe bridging gaps is actually one of my superpowers. Some of you guys know that I have office hours every Sunday. And what I do is I go out of my way to actually listen and talk with people who disagree with me, actively disagree with me. Because by doing that, I'm able to get smarter about a topic, an idea, or an issue. So I do the research, kind of listen to all the sides, kind of present the data. A small example of this is a few weeks ago, Julie and I were on City Council in Palo Alto, and usually our meetings go quite late, midnight or later. And there was an item where it was about the Tesla Palo Alto substation partnership. And there was a member of the community. She was incredibly concerned about what Tesla was going to do. I was able to talk with her, talk with the representative from Tesla, diffuse the situation. At the end, when she came to speak to us, she supported the effort. It was the quickest action item ever in Palo Alto. I think in less than 15 minutes, we voted unanimously for it. So I think this is something I'm actually quite good at.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. All right. Now we're going to move to closing statements. Each candidate has 1.5 minutes for their closing. And as I mentioned earlier, these will be given in the reverse order of the opening statements. That means, Mr. Mustafa, you're first for your closing.
In conclusion, I stand before you all not as a career politician, but as somebody who has put people first. My journey of service and advocacy has started from my days as student body president, where I led the nation in voter registration. registering up to 12,000 students to vote. My advocacy continued as a summer school teacher in inner city schools in Chicago, working for the public defender's office as a law clerk, and fighting for those who needed a voice. My passion towards empowering individuals has led me to start a startup company that was focused on protecting Muslim women and being able to sell that company to the largest Muslim dating app in the country. I have worked as a pro bono attorney representing women's rights and survivors of sexual violence, being awarded Pro Bono Attorney of the Year by a national women's rights organization. I've also worked as somebody in tech, working to stop misinformation and derogatory content in some of the most challenging matters that we have as a society, with artificial intelligence coming along and being much easier and easier to create and much more difficult and difficult to detect. My career is not about climbing a political ladder, but it's about meaningful, tangible service to our community. My career is not city council, state assembly, etc. My career is about people, 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 and that's why I'm running for Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka.
Our district stands at a critical juncture. Imagine a future where 10-foot sea level rise transforms Menlo Park, Palo Alto, Mountain View into flood zones. Nearly half of our sheriff's homes and businesses submerged. This isn't speculative fiction. It's a future that we face without decisive action. The primary role of government is the safety of its people and their property. We urgently need a robust, fairly supported strategy. This is more than erecting barriers. It's about defending our homes, our way of life, and the legacy we leave for our children. The encroaching tide is not on a distant shore, it's knocking at our doors. In Congress, I pledge to secure the federal funding essential for constructing levees that shields our neighborhoods. This effort transcends basic infrastructure. It's a commitment to our collective security, to protecting our homes, and to preserving our community's future. But there's more to this vision. I propose revolutionizing our approach to urban development. By undergrounding Caltrain, we not only enhance our transportation system, but unlock vast areas of affordable housing. This is a twofold strategy, tackling the housing crisis and reinforcing our flood defenses. I stand here asking for your support, not just for my candidacy, but for a vision that safeguards and enriches our community for generations to come. Together, let's turn the tide against sea level rise. Thank you for your time, your trust, and your support.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
First, I want to make sure I spend enough time talking about women's rights. Today, it's not just about being pro-choice. It's not just about being pro-equal pay. It's about really finding real solutions and fighting for this every single day. Men have a much larger role to play than women in ensuring that we can fix this, because we are the reason why it occurs. Today, we have a gender pay gap. Women earn 17% less than women. That needs to be closed. Today, there's tons of gender-based violence, workforce harassment. We need to strengthen Title IX. Men have a large role to play there. And as men, we need to fight for reproductive rights every single day. And I just want to be clear that I am going to be committed to fighting for women's rights in Congress. And that's my commitment and promise to you. Throughout American history, every new generation has risen to bring our country forward. We've overcome everything from world wars to polio. And for those who think now is the time to throw in the towel on American democracy, I am more motivated than ever. I'm going to work to fix our problems. No matter who is in the White House, no matter who is in the speaker chair, I will fight for this district and I will fight for change. When I see a wrong or a problem, I do something about it, just like you. Rather than leaning back and criticizing how things are, let's work to make things the way they should be. I'm Joby Bernstein. I'm running for Congress, and I'm running for you.
Thank you. Mr. Liccardo.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters again for hosting us this evening, and thank you to all the members of the League and all of the individual towns for all that you're doing to preserve our too fragile democracy. I'm running for Congress because we need to get Congress moving on what residents in our community and in communities throughout the country care about the most. And the homelessness crisis, the high cost of living, crime, We all know Congress can do much more in these areas. I've described very specific policy proposals that a divided Congress can enact within our budget in a book that's available on my website, samlicardo.com. Both of the major news dailies in our region, the Mercury News and San Francisco Chronicle, have endorsed me this week because they agree that our residents are looking for concrete solutions in a divided Congress where solutions are too few and too rare. In my final year as mayor of San Jose, we launched innovative solutions that reduced unsheltered homelessness by 11%, left San Jose with the lowest homicide rate of any major US city, and left my successor with a $30 million budget surplus. That's the kind of accountability we need in Congress and what I intend to deliver. So let's get it done. Please join us at samlicardo.com.
Thank you. Ms. Lithcott-Hames.
Thank you. I want to thank the League and the 275 people who watched live and those who watched later. Thanks in large part to the League of Women Voters. We are a thriving, intellectually rigorous community. I am running for Congress, not out of ego or because I think I'm owed it, but out of a sense of duty to our kids and their kids, the future of District 16. I'm in it for them. Our kids cannot afford a place to live. They have to think about how to thrive in their adulthood on a warming planet with rising seas. They're also the first generation who have had active shooter drills as young kindergartners in elementary school and all the way through. Think about that. No wonder their mental health is in the toilet. They know healthcare is unreliable or their health insurance might not cover their meds. They know student loans are out of pace with their earning potential and bodily autonomy and reproductive freedoms are eroding as we speak. Oh, and democracy, which is not a spectator sport. Our kids are afraid and I don't blame them, I blame us. Because y'all, isn't it the mark of a successful society that it creates the conditions under which our youth can thrive? Well, we've failed at that. It's a systems failure. As a leader in Congress, I will restore America's promise that every generation will do better than the one before. We have urgent problems and we have systemic problems, and both require vision. I know how to bring people together, get them to pull together, and together we can achieve the solutions that seem impossible to smaller minds and harder hearts. Check me out at www.julie.vote. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon.
Like Julie just did, I want to thank everybody who is watching at home or who watches this later. This is an exciting opportunity for our district to come and participate again in the first open congressional race in more than 30 years. If you'd like to see what that looks like firsthand, I'd invite you to come visit our website, to come by the campaign headquarters, to come knock on doors with me, to see what this looks like, to meet me in person, not just over Zoom, although it's really good to see everybody here today. So I've taken 3 oaths in my life. I took an oath after 9/11, where I raised my right hand and I swore an oath to the Constitution to defend it against all enemies, foreign, and I can't believe I have to say this, domestic. I took another oath when I married my wife, and we made a promise to live here and to build a future here in this district and build a home. And then I made the same promise that all parents make when they see their kids for the first time, to try and leave them with a better world and a better future than the one left to us by our parents. And for the first time in American history, statistically, parents don't feel like they're going to be able to fulfill that last oath to their kids, which is why I want to take this 4th oath, to take the same oath that I made as a Marine, to defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and build a better world for my children, for your children, for this entire next generation. I hope to earn your trust and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kumar.
So I speak to you, if you're watching this, if you sat and all the way through this video and still watching, I want to thank you. And I ask you to vote for Rishi Kumar, vote for a Getting Things Done approach, and vote for someone who will only fight for you. And I also ask for your campaign contribution for ethics in politics at rishikumar.com. My run will never accept tainted money from PACs and special interest groups. Thank you to the League and to you. I'm a mechanical engineer by education. I'm a full-time software executive. I live in this district and I'm the only candidate in this race who has a proven record of reducing crime, reducing taxes, utility rates, and I was re-elected with the highest vote count in 66 years of my city. We took 42.2% of the vote in this district just about a year ago, and we are poised to win. The automation economy is coming, and we need someone who understands tech from the inside to build a future with AI and with guardrails. The future sustainability of Silicon Valley is at stake. We need problem solvers, and career politicians, unfortunately, are making lots of promises while ignoring their track records. When the cost of groceries and utilities have spiked, they have raised their taxes, they have subverted the solar industry. It's time for change. It's time for ethics in politics. I would be very, very honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otaki.
Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters and to the over 400 people who've signed on and listened to the candidates. This truly is a once-in-a-decade opportunity with this open seat to potentially change the direction, not just of our district, but of our nation. And so we want to look at this very seriously. Pick Peter if you're fed up with partisan gridlock. Pick Peter, I'll say Peter O, if inflation has caused you to live paycheck to paycheck or driving your small business under. Pick Peter if you're worried about rising crime and the fentanyl crisis. Pick Peter if you support common sense gun laws. Pick Peter to ensure our nation's security and to stand by Israel against Iran-backed terrorists. Pick Peter to secure our border as part of comprehensive immigration reform. Pick Peter if you believe climate incentives are more powerful than mandates. Pick Peter so that the sensible middle in this country has a voice in Congress. I'm running to keep our community safe, to keep our nation secure, and to restore the opportunity and promise of Silicon Valley for our kids. I get it, it's stressful enough. Why can't Congress get its job done? I'd appreciate your vote, peterotaki.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
And go 49ers. Bye.
Mr. Simidian.
Thank you. I think the only reason to run for public office at any level is to improve the lives of the people you represent. That's it. If you're doing that, you're doing your job. If you're not, you're not. And the challenge for voters is all of us have said, we're that person. So you've got 11 different folks to hear from. And how do you sift and sort? And I would suggest to you the fact that I have represented 14 of the 15 cities and towns in this district, including San Jose, but also the smaller communities, gives me an insight into the needs, the wants, the wishes, the values of this district that is unique among the candidates. I am proud to be endorsed by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, who knows the people, who knows the challenge of being in Congress, and who knows my work. So thank you to Anna Eshoo for her endorsement. But thank you also to the more than 150 local council members and mayors in these 15 cities and towns who have worked with me, know how I've done the job, know how I'm doing it today, and how I will do it in Congress. I am pleased to be endorsed by the United Farm Workers. That's the social justice Joe. I am pleased to be endorsed by the Consumer Federation of California. That's the Looking Out for Your Pocketbook Joe. I am pleased to be endorsed by the San Mateo County Asian American and Pacific Islander Alliance. That's the Joe who knows we live and work in a diverse community, and that's our strength. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
I want to also thank the candidates that have taken this sacrifice of themselves in this very short runway to acknowledge the importance in answering this call to service, because when we have a variety of candidates, it helps strengthen all of the work that we do to help articulate the value that we hope to bring to Congress. I have served in this community for a number of years, and I hope to be able to continue to serve. When you close your eyes and you imagine what the future of the Democratic Party looks like, especially in this reality in which we could be living under President Donald Trump, what does the bench look like? The name of the game in Congress is longevity and tenure, similar to that of 30 very good, noble years in Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. who is capable of developing that tenure to be on key committees to effectuate an amendment of a particular piece of legislation, to effectuate change in the augmentation and allocations of resources over a period of time. That is the name of the game in Congress. But if you don't just believe me, that's why I've been most prolific lawmaker in the state of California by the Sacramento Bee, Legislative of the Year from the California Police Chiefs Association, endorsed by the California Labor Federation, and endorsed by members of Congress because they want a partner to help elevate Silicon Valley, in the endorsement of Congressmember Ro Khanna. And of course, the most important endorsement of my mother. What loving mother would want to see their child go to Congress? But we all have loving families, and I look forward to this opportunity to serve each and every one of you.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Palo Alto and all of our co-sponsoring organizations, I would like to thank all of these candidates for their dedication in choosing to run for office and for participating in our panel forum this afternoon. I also want to thank our audience for their engagement in our democratic process. For the March 5th primary, the Santa Clara County Leagues are also hosting forums in many other areas, other races. Visit the League of Women Voters of Santa Clara County website. There you can find videos of those forums. And also it'll be on our website, which is listed here, lwvpaloalto.org. We also encourage you to visit vote411.org, right there on the screen. There you will find nonpartisan expanded information about candidates and ballot measures with links to other sources of information about this upcoming election. If you valued this forum and would like to be part of your local league's work, please head to your local league's website and you'll find information on how to join and learn about the wonderful work they're doing. Please encourage your family, your friends, your neighbors to all vote in this election. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.